The photographs may be embarrassing, but the emails are devastating. Tonight, the Metropolitan Police said they had launched an investigation into a 72-year-old man, a former government minister, for misconduct in public office. That man is, of course, Peter Mandelson, and his former colleagues are appalled.
I removed Peter Mandelson as ambassador to the US very shortly after being appointed as Foreign Secretary. There's clearly been a lot of information that just was not known, and these revelations, for me as someone who was in the Treasury at the time of the financial crisis, I find truly shocking.
Peter Mandelson was business secretary during the financial crisis when he's alleged to have leaked market-sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein. His old boss, Gordon Brown, has already contacted the police about what he called an inexcusable and unpatriotic act. Amongst the emails Mandelson allegedly sent to Epstein were a briefing for Gordon Brown on the sale of government assets. What saleable assets, asks Epstein. Land, property, I guess, comes the reply. There was confirmation of the EU's €500 billion bailout, should be announced tonight, Mandelson appears to have written. And also advance notice of Gordon Brown's resignation as Prime Minister. Finally got him to go today, Mandelson appears to boast, around 9 hours before this highly market-sensitive information was made public. The problem in all of this for the current Prime Minister is that he appointed Mandelson ambassador to Washington on the advice of his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney.
It's a national embarrassment that Peter Mandelson, the close friend of a notorious paedophile, was appointed British ambassador above many better and qualified candidates. And that is why we're forcing this rare parliamentary mechanism, forcing the government. We want to know what Morgan McSweeney knew and did, and most importantly, what the Prime Minister knew and why all of this was waved away.
And it's not just the opposition asking questions.
There's been lots of suggestions that McSweeney was the one that has pushed for Mandelson to become the ambassador who's been protecting him. So I think there needs to be a level of investigation in terms of why this was allowed to happen.
This afternoon, Mandelson's retirement was announced in the House of Lords.
The Clerk of the Parliament has today received notification from Lord Mandelson of his intention to retire from the House, effective from 4th February.
But the government is also working on a new law to strip him of his title altogether. Peter Mandelson resigned from government in both 2001 and 1998 after relationships with wealthy businessmen got him into trouble. But this time, the trouble is a lot more serious.
And Carl joins me now. Carl, I mean, a police investigation is always serious. The government clearly giving information to the police. What's the kind of legal bar for this to go further?
Well, there are quite a few of them, Tom. Look, in the first instance, the police have to believe they've got the evidence for a realistic prospect of prosecution. And in this case, that means things like knowing what all those redactions are from the US Department of Justice. We know that a lot of the emails were going from Epstein to Mandelson, but we don't have proof that the replies were from Mandelson's account. So they'll want to see those. After that, they've got to be able to show that this is in the public interest. I think if they've got the evidence, that will be an easier hurdle to clear, because the idea of a senior government minister, in effect the deputy prime minister at the time, leaking information to a financier in the US who was, for some of this period, actually serving a prison sentence, that's an incredibly serious accusation. So if they get that far and it goes to trial, then a jury would have to decide whether or not there had been an abuse of power by Peter Mandelson in his role as business secretary. It is quite complicated. In fact, a lot of lawyers believe it's a not very well defined case, or not a very well defined offence at all, and the government is in the process of replacing it. But this is what Peter Mandelson is being investigated for, and were we to get to a prosecution and a conviction, a jail sentence is not out of the question. We are, however, a long way from that, not least because we haven't heard from Peter Mandelson himself as to what his side of this story is.
Carl, a remarkable turn of events for now. Thank you very much indeed. Well, if that's the potential criminal investigation, there's still a lot of politics in this, and it's potentially very toxic for Sir Keir Starmer, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the biggest political scandals of our lifetime. I mean, even if in the end Peter Mandelson face criminal charges, if he also, there's another risk that there'll be an investigation by the financial regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, because much of what appears to have been passed on looks like market abuse. So, you know, the jeopardy is very high for Mandelson, and indeed for anybody who received information from Epstein. But you know, if we just drill down, I mean, here we have, I mean, there are thousands of communications in this trove that the US government have received, thousands involving Mandelson and Epstein. And what it shows is an astonishingly close relationship over years in which Mandelson funneled the most confidential information to a sex criminal, a paedophile. Just when you just say those words, you realise how astonishing and mind-blowing it is. Terrible for Mandelson, and let's therefore think about who he is. He is one of the most influential figures within the Labour Party over the last 30 years, very few others as associated with the Labour Party as he is, so incredibly damaging for the reputation of the Labour Party. I would argue potentially as damaging, for example, as Partygate. Boris Johnson, a coronavirus debacle has been to the Conservative Party. As Keir Starmer himself told Cabinet today, it also just undermines confidence in politicians in general. It reinforces the view of millions of people watching out there that all politicians are at it. And then finally, the point that you made, right? Many people said to Keir Starmer when he was thinking of appointing Peter Mandelson as his ambassador, this will end in tears. Appointing Peter Mandelson never ends well. And yet, Keir Starmer went ahead and made this controversial appointment. And therefore, I'm afraid, for Keir Starmer himself, his own reputation very severely damaged, despite the fact that his defence is, I didn't know this stuff.
OK, Robert, many twists and turns to come, one would think, but thank you very much indeed. Now, the revelations from the latest huge release of Epstein files have, it seems, finally led to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor leaving his home on the Windsor Estate, Royal Lodge. We understand he left last night. More on that in a moment. Earlier, Andrew's younger brother, Prince Edward, became the first family member to react to the recent dump of documents. He didn't seem very keen to answer questions, but he did tell a conference in Dubai it is really important always to remember the victims. And there are a lot of victims, he said.
Keeping the show on the road is what the royal family is good at, and whatever may or may not be happening elsewhere concerning the King's younger brother, nothing was going to stop the local and regional government employees' reception tonight, and nor would anyone here have wanted it otherwise. Alongside the King and Queen was the Duchess of Edinburgh, whose husband was making headlines of his own today, a long way from here. The Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Edward, is in Dubai, as the British Embassy there was proudly showcasing on its social media pages. But during a session on a conference stage with a microphone hovering near his mouth, the Andrew problem did come up, and Edward was asked about Jeffrey Epstein's victims.
But how are you coping with that?
Well, with the best will in the world, I'm not sure this is the audience that is probably the least bit interested in that. So they all came here to listen to my education solving the future. But no, I think it's all really important always to remember the victims. And who are the victims in all this?
Absolutely.
A lot of victims in this.
Yes, he did say the bare minimum and didn't exactly look happy about being asked, but it's the first time the royal family has spoken on camera about this whole sorry saga involving Andrew. Yesterday, we revealed how Sarah Ferguson took her two daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, to stay with Jeffrey Epstein in 2009, 5 days after he'd left prison for sex offences. We now have the emails to show how Epstein paid for the flights for all three of them. Before they arrived, Epstein and his assistant, Leslie Groff, discussed the flights for the Duchess and the girls from Heathrow to Miami. The return seats in economy for the girls are listed as $4,800 and the return in business for the Duchess, $9,200. The assistant asked Epstein for permission to purchase these tickets. He approves. 6 days later, Epstein's assistant asks about their flights back. The following is from Amanda, the Duchess's assistant, she tells Epstein, and refers to a paragraph which says the Duchess has asked that she is in first and the girls in club on the flight back, claiming Jeffrey said this would be okay. Epstein replies, "I said nothing. Do not respond." A charity run by Sarah Ferguson announced today it was being closed down, perhaps no surprise. As for her ex-husband, who knows what to make of this 2010 email exchange between Epstein and an account called The Duke. After talking about what they called a deal in London, the Duke email writes, "God, it's cold and dank here. Wish I was still a pet in your family." They sign off with the letter A. A pet in your family. It's another example of the very strange yet very close friendship with Epstein.
And Chris is here to talk about all this. Like, you were talking about Royal Lodge only last night and wondering when he was going to leave.
Only last night.
He was leaving.
Yeah, some breaking news. And no sooner has he got that horse back into the stables and taken off his hard hat, it appears he was on his way to Sandringham. Look, we knew he was going to Sandringham. The issue, as we spoke about last night, was what on earth was he doing, you know, riding his horse past those photographers on land, Crown Estate land, that the King had told him to leave. Well, the breaking news tonight is he has left. Not, I'm told, to his permanent residence in Sandringham, to a sort of temporary one, because his permanent residence isn't ready yet, but he's on his way. He's exiled and he's in Sandringham.
Now, we were talking about the Metropolitan Police investigation into Peter Mandelson, but there's mention of this Thames Police looking into it. Not the same as an investigation.
Not the same. Listen, we've got to talk here about a separate allegation, not connected with these emails and documents, but a separate allegation from an alleged victim who claims she was trafficked to Windsor for sex with the then Prince Andrew. Allegations he has consistently denied. He's always denied all the allegations, never been convicted in a court of law of anything at all. However, we learned tonight, I contacted the Met and said, were you looking into these claims? The Met said, well, actually, it's all about Thames Valley Police, because that's where Windsor Castle is. And they said to us tonight, we are aware of reports. A woman is said to have been taken to an address in Windsor, and we are therefore assessing the information in line with our procedures. So not a criminal investigation, but looking at the claims.